Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Star Citizen 4.2 continues on the PTU, with more Evocati patches releasing. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the support. Cannot do this without you guys. So since my last video covering the progress of Star Citizen 4.2, Cloud Imperium have released 2 new patches, still with the Evocati, so still under NDA regarding showing any footage, but we can still run through the patch notes and share our experiences. Unfortunately for me though, I have not even had a chance to check out the latest builds, or any build for that matter, but I will hopefully be jumping in today or sometime tomorrow. Now before we get to it, in celebration of Invictus launch week, the TOBII Eye Tracker 5 is back on sale again at 15% off until June the 5th. And using the link below will take you to that deal, while also providing my channel with a direct kickback. So a huge thank you to those of you who plan to do so, and to those of you who already have. Now let us take a look at the new patch notes. The first of the 2 patches dropped on the 23rd, being last Friday, but very early in the morning here in the UK. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, so it would have been Thursday night for those maybe in America. But for features and gameplay, this build brought with it multiple new hairstyles for the character customizer, and if I recall correctly, there were 4 new hairstyles. I don't know if there are any more. Plus, as we heard on the recent Inside Star Citizen, they are now focusing on more standard hairstyles, rather than the military style for Squadron or the more extreme, like mohawks and stuff. For locations, they have added more structures and turrets to the ASD data center locations, and as soon as I do get a chance to jump in, I will be heading straight for Pyro 1, checking out these new locations while hopefully being in a storm. Now for the Bounty Hunter Guild missions, they have rebalanced the encounters from Patrol Missions version 1. I assume this means tweaking the chance of whatever various scenarios could pop up. And then for ships and vehicles, there is a lot of tweaks and changes here. Firstly, for the Starlance attack, its weapon and turret ammo max counts have been buffed, plus its side turret max speeds were reduced with added acceleration and deacceleration time. They have also moderately increased all of the Starlance's SEM, nav, and boost max speeds. They've updated the ship UI messaging to reflect the average distortion of the power plants as a percentage. They've changed the Singe cannons to be bespoke for the Banu Defender, so I assume you can't take them off and put them on other ships anymore. They have slightly increased the Valkyrie and Asgard's maximum ammo capacity. They've increased the Anvil Centurion's max turret ammo as well, and slightly restricted the Polaris turret's gimbal movement to avoid them clipping through the ship. So quite a lot of tweaks there to ships, new and old, just continuing to balance them. Now, there was also a few updates for how shields regenerate, and it says they have updated shields to reserve buffer per face instead of as one pool. Now, I will just read what it says here, so that those listening can kind of work it out for themselves. I need a bit more time to fully understand exactly what is happening here, as the wording is a bit odd. But it says, currently the reserve pool stores all shield health in one pool, then it distributes that pool evenly back again. This can lead to easy distribution of health between faces again. For example, if one face of the 4 is fully down, then the reserve pool will store 3/4 of the health and then distribute it evenly to all faces again. With this update, shields will now store each face separately in its own reserve pool to avoid this redistribution. That makes sense, but then it says each reserve face stores a percentage of the current face health, and they will regenerate up to a certain percentage of the max face health. So when going from faces to reserve, regeneration won't start the reserve until the face is fully empty, and when going from reserve to faces, it will only ignore regeneration delay for regeneration coming from the pool, but you still get the delay from normal regeneration. Now that last bit, I just can't figure out what it's trying to say there. So if you do have an easy sort of layman's way of explaining that, please drop that in the comments. Otherwise, I'll just have to try and find a bit more understanding to it, or at least test it. Anyway, for weapons and items, they have adjusted the Volt Weapon Series modifiers to improve the feel of hipfire recoil, and they have updated all environmental suit tolerances to be between -150 Celsius up to 175 Celsius. And then for core tech in this build, they disabled rain on Pyro 3 and 4, but added it to Hurston, likely just testing things from a performance standpoint. Rain and lightning, weather, visual effects, lighting, impact, and audio have had an improvement polish, plus ripple, puddle, and wetness graphical effects have had some improvements, and they have removed the ability to disable clouds manually via the attributes.xml file. Now, recently they took away the option for turning clouds off completely in the sort of exposed graphical options. They are trying to set a standard for clouds so that they cannot be completely removed, as it would, of course, give some players who remove them an advantage over those who don't by seeing people in places where they think they are hidden. I get for many they may be turning them off to try and get better, performance, but it's more that it requires better optimizations rather than being able to fully remove them. Of course, there is that dilemma of should they just allow us to turn them off if we're suffering from frame rate issues, but at the same time, in terms of gameplay and missions, we need to be able to hide in these places without others being able to turn off bushes and clouds and whatnot. So, makes sense. Hopefully, if you are suffering from performance issues with clouds on, they can find some optimization soon. And that is it for the first build. There was also about 20 bug fixes, 8 client crash fixes, and 5 server crash fixes. But moving on to the most recent build, features that are still not in for testing or ready for testing are the improved kiosk interactions, the Argo combat mech, the Volt shotgun, Wakullo's new ship additions, and then the 2 other redacted items. Now, they're most likely in the build to some degree, a lot of these, not all of them, but some of them, but they are not ready for getting feedback. Now, for features and updates, in locations, they have done further polish and optimizations to these data center locations, including lighting and activity. Not sure if activity means something like NPCs or the Valakar AI or whatever, but that would be my guess, is the NPCs. They have also updated the shape and color of the ASD keycards, so the cards that allow you to get through various doors. And for gameplay, they have increased the ship soft death ratio to enter soft death at a higher health pool. So this means ships will be entering soft death more commonly, generally a bit quicker than they do now, which is all leading closer to when engineering comes along, so that ships will get disabled more than just blowing up, and it'll give players time to fix them. Also, explosive ordnance will now explode when distorted and the safety is off. So I think what this means is that for things like bombs or torpedoes, provided they have launched effectively, which means their safety will be turned off, distortion damage can explode them. That's what I get from this. And then finally for core tech, there have been further rain visual effects, lighting and audio polish, as well as 5 new potential bug fixes, 1 client crash fixed and 1 hybrid crash fixed. Now, there are currently 15 known issues listed here. I'm not going to run through them in this video. A lot of them are just related to the latest missions and so forth, but as we are still very early on in the patch's rollout, there is no point in pointing out these until we're a bit further on, as hopefully many of them will be fixed well before they come to live, but of course that doesn't count for all of them. But ultimately, there is a lot of stuff going on for 4.2 outside of the announced new additions, like the vehicle balance, that we will see a lot of changes and tweaks to many vehicles, which I'm sure will be a very common thing going forwards for the next year, like for the full year, maybe even into next year as well. Do expect a lot of changes to everything regarding ships, with engineering, flight changes, and so much more starting to roll out. Many things will be shifted. Some may feel right, some may not, some will be way out of whack, but it is all about getting us to where it needs to be. So, of course, provide that constructive feedback when necessary, like on Spectrum or wherever they ask. But I certainly advise from just posting rants about every single change, as they will just clutter up the place where the devs need to go to find the information. But 4.2 is coming along nicely. There is a lot to this patch, and with it starting its PTU journey already, means it could stay within the Evos for at least another week. It may move on to Wave 1 at some point soon, just to open up to more backers, but there is a full month and a bit before it is set to release at the end of June. So, letting it cook will hopefully see a lot of these other fixes for other issues in the verse get fixed as well. But that said, I will be working on my latest off-grid series, getting that kicked off again. Really excited to get back on with that one, while also hopefully finding time to jump in and test out the Evocati build. I'm itching to check out this rain. I just do not have any time in the real world at the moment. But with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. I will be live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday this next week between 2 and 6 PM BST. You're all more than welcome, either here on YouTube or over at Twitch. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you'd like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for the support, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.